there was a number of us at that time that would sit around and say these, we wish Midland had this, or we wish Midland had that. And I can remember sitting there and being like, I could be that person that says these things for my whole life. But that's, there's too many of us, or too many of people like that just kind of mention haphazardly and then don't ever put themselves out there to kind of make it happen.
Welcome back to the Talk Midland podcast. My name is Logan Richetti with Modern Realty. Today I have my pal Grant Murschel, and we're going to talk about his new restaurant experience,
dining experience. Yep. A little bit light on the food for sure, but definitely drinks. So I don't know if that qualifies as a full restaurant, but yeah, neighborhood bar, social club, all that good stuff.
Nord Social. Mm-hmm. What a rad name.
Well. Thank you.
Where does that come from? What does it mean?
Sure. So Nord means north in a lot of European languages. And the concept behind Nord Social is around creating an environment that's Scandinavian inspired and really playing off the northern latitude that Midland's located. So I know we don't often think of ourselves as living up north in Michigan, since a lot of us do go north for things. But to a lot of people downstate especially, we are north. And so kind of playing into that, but then also using a lot of the ethos, I guess you could say, of Scandinavian culture, which is around on days like today. We just got a big snowstorm, but creating that really cozy environment in the winter so that there's a lot of excitement still happening in colder, darker, grayer months, but then also using a lot of natural light so that it's equally fantastic in the great summer, spring, and fall months as well. So the interior design will be informed by that, and the identity of the bar is really going to be playing off of that with a lot of local influence too. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of it in a nutshell.
All right, so it's a bar.
Yes.
Where's it going to be?
It'll be in Center City, so right on South Saginaw Road, 415 South Saginaw Road.
Cool.
Yes. So some of folks may remember that as, I believe, Pathways Christian Bookstore was in that building for a long period of time, and then there was another business that operated for a couple of years prior to me buying the building last year. So it's a single-story commercial building right next to Frankenmuth Credit Union. Mm-hmm. And then on the side of us, we have the two-story white building that's got some residential mixed use, and then Hungry Howie's not too far. Yep. Across the street from the Bully. So we're excited to be neighbors with them and create a little bit more of an option in that kind of the part of the city. So, yeah.
Well, I remember talking to Selena from the city, and she had been mentioning a lot of development, a lot of focus in that corridor. Mm-hmm. A lot of intentional concentration from the powers that be trying to build out that area.
Yeah.
So this is a great time to be making a big investment, taking a big shot right there.
Yes, definitely a big investment. But no, appreciate it. We're excited, and it's me and two business partners. So Brad and Haley Tunney, the three of us are taking on this endeavor together, and they've been fantastic to be collaborating with. But yeah, what attracted us to Center City and really me to buy the building was a lot of that investment that has happened in Center City, and the Center City Authority, of course, being integral in the new streetscape, which has completed the first phase, but we'll work on the second phase around the circle. But, there's a lot of other stuff, great things happening in the circle, the new fitness studios, Sergey's Bakery.
Yep.
That's a pretty exciting thing to happen recently, and Boomerang Coffee, and a lot of other businesses right in there too. So being kind of background of public sector, a lot of times when you have different districts of the city that you want to see more investment, a lot of times public investment is going to precede a lot of private investment, since public actors can take a little bit more risk than a private entity can. So when you see a big investment like this happen from the city and the Center City Authority, and certainly philanthropy that funded a lot of that, it's great that the private side has started to see the vision that's being casted, and then start to really make it happen in ways that impact the private property and the businesses that exist there.
Well, you were the Midland Planning Director.
Yes.
Is that right? That was the title?
Yep.
Okay, that's where we met.
Correct.
And how long ago was that when you were in that role?
So I was in that role 2017 to 2022.
Okay, so that was a little bit of a tough time to be in that role. If you remember, there was a big thing called a flood that happened.
There was.
And we had some, a lot of drama, a lot of stress and things going on around there. But I always remember you being very forward thinking and very pro growth and pro development in a conscious and a responsible manner. But I anytime I had a couple dealings with you, I don't know if you remember, but when
Yeah.
we were trying to build apartments or duplexes or whatever, and you were always so helpful. And everybody down at the Midland City was so helpful. The fire department, the planning department, building department, engineering. It seems it's a little bit of a smaller community feel than it would be in New York City trying to do something.
Yeah.
But everybody down there, I always am so amazed at how inviting and open and helpful they are. Is that still the case?
I think so. Yeah, I know there's really a strong encouragement from top down, and definitely when I started with John Lynch there as city manager, the moniker was always let's help them get to yes.
Cool.
So it wasn't about creating barriers to development or barriers to progress or barriers to things happening. It was all about we play a role within executing policy that city council has adopted or state law in some cases. But largely, we were the folks on the front lines helping people through that process, and the goal was to get them to yes. I can just remember being that very short coaching early on when I first started there as something that was really important. And yes, I think City Hall still very much operates in that way.
Well, now you're taking a leap into the private side of this endeavor, and is this your first private enterprise?
It is absolutely this kind of built environment. I've done some consulting on the side for a number of years, but this is definitely the first physical building purchase beyond the place that I live, and certainly the commercial foray going into to doing this. But I don't have completely zero experience on food and beverage side. So I ran the Larkin Beer Garden back when it moved back to Larkin in 2023. For a few months, and then dipping back a few years ago back into college and high school experience, there was a lot of food and beverage experience around that time too. So we're it's not a ton like when you compare yourselves to a lot of really fantastic operators and owners in our area, but there's been a huge amount of help from a lot of people, a lot of folks that are in the game right now or were in the game previously that have reached out to say, hey, think about this, or have you thought about that? Or we strongly encourage you to think through your ownership model and your management model and your technical workers on the front lines. Using a lot of that type of thought process early on as we're getting started has been really helpful.
Well, you know me, I like to get into these details.
Sure.
So let's start with the real estate side of it, then we'll get into the business operation side of it,
Okay.
a little bit of the vision, and kind of get a better feel of how you're putting all this together, because people listening, this is no joke. This is a monumental endeavor to put something like this together. And it's one thing to sit around, at a bar with your buddies talking about, hey, let's make our own bar. It's a whole nother thing to actually go execute it.
Yeah.
So bravo, even for trying, by the way.
Well, thank you.
And obviously you have a lot of supporters already. A lot of people on social media are very excited about this concept. So let's give the folks a little bit of an idea of what it takes to go from idea to implementation. You up for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So the first thing, I assume that you and your pals were sitting around and said, hey, let's build a bar. Is this something you've always wanted to do? Or did you just come up with it recently?
Yeah, no, yeah, this is going back probably a decade or more.
I thought so.
Yeah. And there's been a number of conversations with folks in town around speakeasy concept or cocktail lounge,
Cigar
or
bar.
cigar bar. The list goes on. And back when I first joined MyPros, probably 10 years ago or so, the Young Professional Network through the Business Alliance. There was a number of us at that time that would sit around and say these, we wish Midland had this, or we wish Midland had that. And I can remember sitting there and being like, I could be that person that says these things for my whole life. But that's, there's too many of us. There are too many of people like that just kind of mention haphazardly and then don't ever put themselves out there to kind of make it happen. So I would say that one of the things I was involved in early on with that work was the MyPros crowdfund. And that was really getting to know a lot of business owners through that process, and then helping them raise the money needed through that crowdfund that then would get matched to be able to stretch their dollars a little bit more. And that was always kind of gravy funding. But really, that was my first experience looking at business plans, financials for small businesses, how they're getting started, how they're going forward, and monitoring their cash flow and doing their projections to understand how well they're going to do. So there's a lot of learning through that whole program. But around that same time, it was like, we wish we had this kind of place or that kind of place. And that made me start to think through what could a concept like this look like eventually.
Well, when I was 24, I managed a restaurant for a while. It was open. It was a seasonal restaurant in New Hampshire, open 4 months a year. Did $750,000 in revenue in 4 months.
Holy cow!
Yeah, it was a lobster bar and a dairy bar at the same time. It was a weird concept.
All right.
But I remember everybody who's worked in a restaurant has dreamed about opening a bar or a restaurant. Pretty much, it seems like, because it's like that movie Waiting. Everybody has that idea of, hey, I want to do it this way, or this is a good concept, or a little spin on it, like a little Top Gun, different spins. But so you put this together, this vision together with your partners, and then obviously you have a lot of background through MyPros and through your public service and all these different things. And so it makes sense where you could actually formulate a plan that's actually economically viable. And that's a big part of going from dream to reality, is you have to think it through and make a plan that actually could be executed from a financial standpoint, because that's a major part of it.
Yep.
So you put that together, and then did you have a clear vision for this particular property, or did it just come along at the right time? How did you identify the location?
Yeah, great question. So I looked at a number of properties up and down South Saginaw Road, really for the last 3 years. So when I started, after I left the city and went to Space Incorporated, starting to look at properties and envisioning what they could be, while having this idea of a third place bar, neighborhood, cocktail lounge kind of idea floating around in my head. And so toured a number of buildings up and down the corridor. And then one day I just kind of drove by this one at 415 and was like, I've never noticed that for sale sign. And honestly, never really noticed that building, because it is kind of easy to miss until you start to pay attention to it, as a lot of those buildings are right there in that block of Saginaw. But yeah, there was always kind of a number of possibilities with different properties. And then thankfully the work that I was doing at Space allowed me to really kind of chase down a little bit of those visions, to really sniff out whether they were feasible, whether the pro forma made sense. And with this particular property, actually last summer, I was thinking of adding a second story and doing some mixed use housing to it, where I'd find a tenant in the commercial space and then build out 3 residential units as well. Even went as far as applying for a state grant that I wasn't awarded for that. But yeah, so that was, as I was exploring options for it, I always knew, okay, if that plan didn't work out, there was going to be other options to go forward as well. So yeah, so that was part of the thought process. And then when that grant fell through, it was like, all right, let's really lean into this third place concept. And the building itself has great bones. And so a build out is pricey, like any construction right now.
Sure.
But yet it has what you want out of a place like that, with sidewalk access in front, street parking in front, a parking lot in the back. It's just under 3,000 square feet total. So we have an occupancy of around 80, which is really great when you start to then put your financials together for what does the build out look like to buy furniture for all of that, and the expenses for the warming kitchen and the bar itself. And then taking through, well, how many times are you going to turn the tables to be able to get your revenue to come back in? What are the projections going to look like on Tuesday or Wednesdays of the week compared to Friday, Saturday, when are really big nights for establishments like this. So all of that was kind of being thought through at the same time. And then I really was thinking cocktail lounge at the beginning, because I was thinking that was something that Midland has some options of. But it could have been a little bit of a niche into that particular part of the city. Talked to a lot of folks that have food and beverage experience in the community, and ultimately we're like, really rethink maybe what your concept is. And there was some really good advice given to me about understanding the neighborhood and the ethos of the neighborhood, and then being able to find a missing niche within that specific pocket of the city, and then really build something that's going to be approachable, easy for people to access, and hopefully regulars that'll come that are, a pretty short walk or drive away to really get that base that's existing in the residential neighborhoods that are right there, or the businesses that are up and down that corridor.
Well, if you're looking at the Bully and then you look at, say, 118, they're just different environments.
Absolutely.
Different environments is a good way to say it.
Yep.
So where do you think Nord Social will kind of fit in that matrix? Kind of catering more towards the local neighborhood people that can walk to it. It's a little bit less formal, maybe.
Yes.
More inviting. Not that 118 isn't inviting, but a little bit just more relaxed is the word.
Absolutely.
Is that the word you'd use?
I would say relaxed for sure. Now, the Scandinavian interior design is going to elevate that slightly, but we don't want it to be unapproachable. We want folks that are in that neighborhood to feel like this is their place. And so we know that we can do that through menu offerings, definitely being intentional around price point and the type of menu. One thing you'll see from our establishment isn't You won't walk in and see $6,000 worth of liquor behind the bar.
Okay.
It's going to be a lot more simplified in that regard. But at the same time, really paying attention to what the patrons are wanting and what is selling and what we can offer or enhance in order to really stay minimal, a very Scandinavian idea of a minimal approach, but also really meeting the needs there. So it'll be a simplified menu on the both drinks and food side. But I think that coupled with a single point of sale at the bar is really going to make it not the fine dining type of establishment or maybe that higher end place that we have in Midland, and kind of will fit nicely in between some different segments of the market.
I don't spend a lot of time in bars, so help me visualize what it will feel like. Will there be TVs in the corner, or is it more of a light music playing, or what will the ambiance feel like?
Yeah, great question. So we will have TVs on the wall. And a few bars that we're modeling it after down in Detroit, I think do it well, where you've got a TV that does become a focal point, but yet you don't pipe in the music unless it's a really big game or it's a really big something that's on TV. And then a lot of times you can turn your TV off, or in the case of like Prost in Bay City and Frankenmuth, it'll be a fireplace that'll be on their TV when there's not a big important thing happening. So we'll really play with it in that regard because we don't want it to be a sports bar. We know we have other options for that in Midland, but yet there is times where it really will feel like a sports bar, maybe when Lions are playing, or if local cricket aficionados want to adopt us as their place to go. We're open to all that kind of stuff.
That's
Maybe
cool.
we'll become the Liverpool bar for this part of Michigan. So it'll kind of ebb and flow in that regard, but we will have music that'll be playing 9 times out of 10. And really wanting to create almost like an indoor beer garden experience where you can go up, grab your drink at the bar, go sit down, and then go at your own pace. And there won't be a server coming to check on you every minute or 10 minutes. But it's really up to you and how you create that experience and how often you go up, all while wanting to make it really clean, really family friendly. Dogs to come onto the patio in the warmer months and that kind of idea. Does that give you a little bit better explanation?
That sounds great.
All right.
It has little flavorings of the beer garden a little bit with the outdoor feel and the having your pets outside and I personally am attracted to the concept of going to get a drink, bringing it back to a space where we can talk and hear each other talk. If it's a football game, maybe it's B-dubs or maybe it's, over at the Holiday Inn, whatever that is.
Big E's.
Big E's,
Yes,
thank you. Yeah,
yes,
I mean,
yes.
there's plenty of places to go rah, cheer for the game. And I think that'd be fine if you have the game going and that time of year it'd be fun to watch football there or whatever. But I think there's a lot more opportunity for other types of gatherings other than just loud screaming sports.
Correct.
And that's pretty interesting because I can't think of any place in town right now that offers that. Can you?
Not really. No, I think, with, like when the Commons is warmer months downtown, certainly you can treat the Commons in that type of way.
Sure.
And be able to kind of do that. And definitely Larkin Beer Garden, I think was like that at different times, although it was so packed, at different times of the year where it was hard to, I mean, you were interacting with everyone, at that point, but yeah, I think the other thing too that we'll be intentional about in the design is acoustics. That's one thing that we've paid attention a lot to because I think there are establishments that have great intentions around people being able to have those conversations because they don't have big TVs and they don't blare music. But a lot of times just when they get full, you end up yelling at one another because acoustically the space just isn't designed in that regard. So that's something that we're budgeting for in order to ensure that we can create that atmosphere in the right way and make it easy for people to communicate. We'll also benefit from having 2 buildings. The property itself is actually 2 buildings that were built back in the 50s. And so we'll keep the wall up between and we'll have 2 walkways that'll go between. So we'll be able to kind of, in one side, it'll be a little bit more able to flex into a big game type of atmosphere where the middle part should be able to still retain a fair conversational type of environment from just about 90 or 100% of the time, where I think that, the 2 spaces will be able to benefit where we can kind of create a little bit of differentiation between the 2.
Well, you know this better than anybody working with space, the company. When you're developing a space and you're working with architecture and engineering and all that stuff, you got to think about acoustics. You got to think about lighting, both natural light and artificial light that you plug in. You got to think about flow. You got to think about walking, traffic, foot traffic, egress, ingress, all the different elements. There are so many elements that go into putting a space together. Not to mention the design and the feel and the
Yep.
ambiance.
Yep.
That's just a lot. That's a lot going on.
Hmm.
But let's talk about this concept of what is it? Third place.
Yes. Yes.
I've only recently, ever since watching you
Sure.
promote this, have learned about this concept. So can you share what this concept means and why it's important to Midland?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a little wonky. I will acknowledge that because it is maybe a little bit more academic since it comes from social science research. The whole idea is around recognizing that a large part of the population operates in two spaces for most of their day. They have their home as their first place, and then they have their place of work or their place of education as their second place. Now, that's not everyone. There are, of course, people that don't have a place of employment or education that go and spend time elsewhere. But a lot of times they're naturally inclined to want to go spend times in what's called third places, which is places you can build connection, you can be able to find belonging, people that you love interacting with, or you're able to plug in and find some type of appreciation of this, that, or the other thing. And those third places are super important for communities to flourish, because that is where you see a lot of higher levels of well-being, per the research that's done across the world. People that have connections to third places within their lives typically are happier on average. Find themselves to be higher senses of well-being, which allows them to then flourish in other aspects of life, whether that's physical health or it's mental health or the like. So all of that in my mind is really important when it comes to being intentional about these types of places in a community. And it's very different than, like, I know it was kind of a joke a few years ago around, like, well, if Midland doesn't have a lot of third places, what are our third places? And someone kind of piped up in the room I was in and was like, I think it's our SUVs. And, there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, there's a lot of time spent driving from place to place. Say you're shuttling kids back and forth from place to place. That could be your third place, is your car. While it's great to get from place to place, it doesn't offer connection. It doesn't offer the ability to have spontaneous types of conversations that can lead to just really fantastic stuff. It offers tranquility and maybe just a little bit of escape in large part, but yet we also we're social people, we're social beings. We need to have those interactions, and communities that offer a lot of those, I think, are some of the best places to live in the world.
Well, you keep using the word community, and that's the key. And that's where, when you were in planning, you were always driving towards better, more vibrant community. And Midland is a beautiful, wonderful, thriving community. But the knock on Midland would be that there just aren't as many third places as other areas. That especially younger people that are more interested in third places as recreation and belonging. Are longing for that a little bit. We have a lot of coffee shops that are nice. Obviously, we have a lot of areas like that. And I think when you say third place, I think areas like we're in now with the coffee shops and meeting areas like that. But there aren't a lot. The nightlife is not super robust. There aren't that many options, and that's kind of a knock that a lot of people will say. And when we're trying to attract talent for Dow and other industries, the more of these third places we can put together, the better. Not only for the corporate level people, but also just the people the community members that live and work here all the time.
Absolutely.
So I think this is great what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you. And I think there are a lot of third places that maybe aren't necessarily in kind of the ones that we're talking about. We've got like the country club, and we've got certainly schools and places of worship and other fraternal organizations and places like that that Midland's had for years and years. I think that there's an element of possible, I hate to use the word segregation because it's not, a bad type of thing. It separates people out maybe into different socioeconomic groups.
Sure.
And then a lot of times when I first moved to Midland, there's like the Alice population is continuing to grow. There's definitely poverty, homelessness, issues that we deal with. And there's a lot of folks that don't realize that that's going on in the community. And I think it's because you can exist in Midland from first place, second place, and third places without really getting a big swath of the population. And the great thing that you can do when you have places like coffee houses or neighborhood bars or the pedestrian plaza, for example, on Main Street, is really start to mix those groups of people. Yeah. And that's a great thing, I think, because you get to know a lot of other experiences in your own community. And I think knowledge is power in a lot of ways. And so there's a lot of value that comes out of that. So
Well, where you are going is certainly aligns with that idea, because I can't think of, obviously the bullies there in that corridor, but I can't think of a lot of third places there. Bakery doesn't count as a third place. That's where you're doing commerce.
it might be in the morning.
Okay, maybe. Yeah, sure.
And there's My Element. That's that's right there off Jefferson. And so, there's a couple of them, but there's definitely room for more.
And I love watching the development down around the circle. Are we at a point now where phase 2 with the city of Midland has been decided? Because last year when I interviewed Selena, they were still going through the process of which plan to execute and getting all the money ready, a lot of private investment as well as grants and whatever. Where are we on that? Do you have any idea?
I do, yeah. So they have not made final decisions on the design of phase 2. So impacting the circle, that's all still in the planning phase and will eventually progress to engineering once more of a decision's been made. But that's coming soon, I believe.
Your business is a little bit, is it adjacent to the actual circle by a couple yards, or is it, it's right off 50, 100 yards off?
It is, yeah, because there's Dartmouth that's in between us and the circle. So we're about a block down, but we are still technically the Center City A district, which is where that second phase is impacting. So so we're not where the new sidewalks and streetscape has been. We're in what will be that new phase, and definitely excited to engage in that process, and I hope other business owners and community members are too, because, having walked from the Community Foundation to Sergey's earlier this week, that is not a great experience.
No.
Add some ice onto the roads, and sidewalks was a little treacherous, but even in the best weather of days, it is a really awful pedestrian experience to traverse through there.
Well, that gets political because people are pro or against change.
Yes, you're right. I'll hop off my soapbox.
Yeah, I don't want to go down that road because I don't want to get in trouble. But my question is more connected to if and when those changes occur. Is that going to have you brought that into consideration in terms of your plan when that will change? Because at some point, it most likely the traffic pattern, the flow, the sidewalks, the roads will change. But I think I can assume, or I think I've theorized that would probably be more beneficial, or at least helpful to your business to get more traffic and more flow. Is that right?
It is. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, as long as the plan that goes forward is really intentional to try and balance a good medium between vehicle traffic and pedestrian and biking traffic, that's great for all the businesses, and definitely for our business. I think that's something that if we can balance that out in a great way, it's going to help just increase accessibility, which for anyone that runs a business that relies on foot traffic or vehicle traffic, the more accessible your space can be, the better.
All right, let's put the developer hat back on for 1 minute.
Sure.
When you bought this building, did you have to get it rezoned?
I did not.
It was zoned?
It was zoned. It's zoned commercial, and then there's the new Center City overlay district, which would allow for like the mixed use component, and definitely the commercial zoning allows for the bar social club concept.
I didn't realize that. But how about a liquor license?
Great question. So there are not any available in escrow throughout the county, and so we'll go for a redevelopment liquor license, which is something that a lot of businesses in town have participated in since the state allowed that to happen 5 or so years ago. But because we're in the Center City Authority District and there's been the threshold of public investment that's taken place, plus our investment into the building, we're eligible for that redevelopment liquor license, which will attach to the property. We won't be able to transfer it to other properties in the future, but it'll allow us to open and operate.
Okay, that's a big component. That's a big hurdle. Have you started construction?
So we've done some demolition on the inside, partnering with Great Lakes Bay Construction as our GC. They've been fantastic to work with. Sean and Jeff and others, Joe and the like over there.
My pickleball buddies.
Hey, good. That's good stuff. Yeah. But yeah, they've been terrific. So yeah, we started with some demolition just to be able to have a fresh start with what we're wanting to do. Discovered asbestos, which is not uncommon for buildings of that age. So going through remediation on that right now. So we're in a little bit of a lull at the moment, but the goal is to continue to push forward with that and still open by sometime this summer.
Let me tell you what happens when you find asbestos. Everything stops. Your costs go up. Your timelines get delayed. Now you have to bring in professional remediation. It costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of time, a lot of hassle. Where did you find it? In the ceilings or in the walls or the floor?
In the tile, in the mastic.
Yeah, a lot of times those little 9x9 tiles have it, and you got to test it, and you got to do the right thing, and you can't just cover it up or sweep it out. You got to get rid of it. So
absolutely.
It's a pain in the neck. I've done that
Yes.
many a time.
Yeah, part of the process. I know we had contingency lined up for this type of thing, but you're right. Yeah, costs did go up, and of course, timeline stretches out, which is not a good thing. But yet, we'll be able to weather it and continue to move forward. But there'll be other surprises, and it's just a matter of dealing with them and coming at them logically, I guess.
That is the mind of an entrepreneur, of a visionary. That's the attitude that you have to have if you're taking on a project like this. You're going to get knocked down. You're going to get cost overruns. You're going to get delays. Things are not going to go exactly according to plan, and you just have to power forward. So good for you.
Yeah,
It's exciting.
Yeah,
Very
thank
exciting.
Thank you.
Summer 2025 is the goal?
That is the goal.
Holy cow. All right. So if anybody wants to follow along on this journey, is there any place we can go to watch to see it happening? Where do we go?
There is, yeah, Facebook and Instagram. So Nord Social Facebook page, and then nord.social.midland on Instagram.
Grant, thanks for being on the Talk Midland podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me.